The secret underground world beneath the earth, what they tried to bury forever. The hidden pulse beneath our feet. They say we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the depths beneath our own planet. Beneath the soil, the rock, and the forgotten strata of human time lies a world we were never meant to find. A world older than memory, stranger than myth, and more advanced than anything carved in stone above ground. For centuries, whispers have persisted. Stories of tunnels stretching for miles, colossal chambers beneath mountains, and entire cities buried far below deserts and ice. To most, these were legends, born from the imagination of ancient storytellers. But what if they weren't myths? What if the ancients were describing something real, something humanity once knew and then was forced to forget? Archaeologists call it coincidence. Historians call it metaphor. But across continents and civilizations, separated by oceans and millennia, the same stories echo like a hidden pulse under the surface. The Sumerians wrote of the Abzu, the great deep, a world of knowledge below. The Egyptians told of Duat, the underworld not of death, but of divine architecture and light. In Mesoamerica, the Maya spoke of Xibalba, the realm below the roots of the earth, not hell, but a hidden kingdom where gods once walked. And here, in our modern age of satellites and science, we have begun to detect things that defy explanation. Subterranean anomalies, massive voids, and artificial tunnels deep within the crust of the planet. Structures where none should exist. Patterns carved in stone far beneath our feet, as if someone or something once lived, built, and perhaps still watches from below. Governments have sealed certain caves from public access. Archaeological dig sites have vanished from maps overnight. And in remote deserts, explorers report the same chilling pattern. Entrances that appear for days, then collapse as if the earth itself is hiding them. It sounds impossible, and yet the evidence keeps surfacing. Satellite imaging showing linear formations hundreds of meters below ground, unexplained magnetic readings, and the eerie consistency of ancient myths that all speak of a world below. A network, a design, a memory. But if such a world exists, who built it? And what happened to them? Perhaps they didn't vanish. Perhaps they simply went deeper, beyond the reach of history, beyond the rewriting of time. And maybe the reason the truth has been buried isn't because we're not ready to find it, but because they never left. In this journey, we'll explore what science refuses to publish, what history has edited away, and what our ancestors may have tried to warn us about. From the forgotten catacombs beneath Cappadocia to sealed tunnels in South America, from hidden maps in the Vatican archives to the unexplainable voids under the Great Pyramid, every clue leads downward. This isn't conspiracy. This is connection. A hidden world, deliberately buried, waiting for us to remember, because somewhere, deep beneath the surface, something ancient is stirring. And once the truth emerges, the world above will never be the same. The cities beneath the stone. There are places in the world where silence feels heavier than stone. In the heart of Turkey's Anatolian plateau, beneath a land of dust and volcanic rock, lies an entrance so ordinary that even shepherds once passed it by. A narrow hole in the ground, a few steps descending into darkness, and then the impossible, a city buried beneath the earth itself. When explorers first entered Derinkuyu, they expected a cave. What they found was an underground metropolis, 18 levels deep, carved with precision, designed with ventilation shafts, water wells, and chambers large enough to hold 20,000 people. Corridors wound downward like arteries, connecting rooms for storage, worship, and life itself. It was not a refuge, it was a world. Archaeologists date it to around the 8th century BCE, but the rock tells another story. Signs of older chiseling, ancient soot embedded in ceilings, thousands of years deeper than expected. Someone had used firelight here long before history arrived to name it. And the deeper they went, the stranger it became. Smooth passages intersected with tunnels that seemed machine-cut. Massive circular doors, weighing tons, slid perfectly into place, as if engineered by design, not carved by hand. Whoever built this didn't just survive underground. They mastered it. Legends from Cappadocia tell of a time when fire fell from the skies and the people fled to the belly of the earth to escape the wrath of the gods. What if that wasn't myth but memory? What if Derinkuyu and its sister cities were not mere fortresses but shelters from something catastrophic above? The same pattern appears elsewhere. In India's Ajanta caves, in Egypt's hidden catacombs beneath Saqqara, in the vast labyrinths under South America's Andes, all distant, all unrelated, yet all speaking the same architectural language. Coincidence or continuity? Modern LiDAR scans have begun revealing miles of tunnels extending beyond Derinkuyu's known limits, tunnels that link to other buried cities. Local authorities have sealed many of them, officially for safety, unofficially because some lead to unstable zones that no one wants to map. But leaked expedition notes speak of something else. Structures beyond the rock, walls of a different material, smooth as glass, immune to drills. One team reported hearing a hum, a low, constant vibration coming from deeper chambers they were forbidden to enter. Could it be geological resonance? Or could it be something left behind, a remnant of a power source, or even a warning? In 2014, satellite imaging over the region detected symmetrical cavities beneath Cappadocia. Perfect hexagonal grids, unlike any natural formation. They disappear from public databases days after upload. Yet copies of the data survive, and they show one unmistakable pattern. The tunnels align precisely with magnetic anomalies in the crust, almost as if whoever built them knew how to harness the planet itself. The ancients spoke of the earth as alive, a body with veins, breath, and pulse. Perhaps these underground networks were not just shelters, but part of that body's design, connecting energy points long before we understood what energy meant. Imagine living down there, the air cool and still, torches flickering against walls carved with symbols now eroded to ghosts. Above, storms of ash. Below, the echo of tools shaping stone, the murmured prayers of a people who believed the surface was no longer theirs. When you stand inside Derinkuyu today, the silence feels aware, as if the city is listening, waiting for the ones who left to return. Some scientists dismiss these connections, others quietly admit the timelines don't match. If human civilization began only 12,000 years ago, who carved chambers that show weathering from a far older climate? If these cities were made after the last ice age, why do we find ventilation systems designed for atmospheric pressures that no longer exist on the surface? The deeper we dig, the less sense history makes. And that is exactly why so much remains buried, not because we can't find it, but because it contradicts everything we've been taught. Perhaps the truth lies not in the stones, but in the silence between them, a silence that protects something far greater than survival, memory. A memory of a world that thrived below while another perished above. A civilization that understood the earth not as a prison, but as a sanctuary. And maybe, just maybe, their descendants are not lost at all. Maybe they're still down there, listening. The hidden network. When the first explorers of the modern age began tracing the legends of tunnels beneath the earth, they didn't expect to find connections between continents. Yet, again and again, they did. Caverns in Turkey mirrored passages beneath Peru. Ancient stairways beneath Egypt matched slopes hidden under Guatemala, separated by oceans, cultures, and millennia, yet bound by the same unspoken blueprint. Some called it coincidence. Others began to wonder if what lay beneath us was not a series of isolated mysteries, but a single vast system built long before our written history began. In 1923, a Jesuit scholar studying Mayan inscriptions described roads of the underworld, Sakbaob, said to stretch for hundreds of miles, connecting temples below the light. Years later, explorers diving into Yucatan's cenotes found stone corridors running in impossible directions, their ends sealed by collapses or solid limestone. LIDAR scans revealed what sonar could not. The tunnels continued deeper and older, beyond any known Mayan construction. Thousands of miles away in Egypt, archaeologists investigating beneath the pyramid of Zawiet el-Aryan found descending shafts leading into chambers that disappeared into flooded passageways. Some walls bore strange geometric markings, not hieroglyphs, but lines of light and shadow carved into the rock itself. And in Saqqara, ground-penetrating radar has uncovered an enormous void beneath the Serapeum, too deep and symmetrical to be natural. Its purpose remains classified. From Asia to the Americas, the pattern repeats. The ancients did not just build upon the earth, they built into it, as if following a plan passed across ages, a design invisible from the surface, but obvious once you look down. The most striking evidence comes from Peru's Chavín de Huántar, a temple complex carved directly into the Andes more than 3,000 years ago. Its labyrinthine tunnels were not random, they were tuned. Acoustic studies have shown that when certain frequencies are played within the corridors, the walls resonate, amplifying sound waves until the entire structure hums like a living instrument. Priests could speak softly and be heard in chambers hundreds of feet away. Was this a ritual tool or a technology? The same principle appears in the Hypogeum of Malta, a subterranean complex that predates the pyramids. At its core lies the oracle chamber, whose frequency of 110 Hz has measurable effects on the human brain, altering perception, inducing trance-like states. Coincidence again? Or evidence of a shared understanding of resonance, an ancient science of sound, vibration, and the earth itself? Across the planet, myths tell of beings who came from below, not demons, but teachers, carriers of wisdom and light. The Hopi of North America spoke of the ant people who saved humanity from a fiery cataclysm by leading survivors underground. In Tibet, the Shambhala texts describe a radiant realm beneath the mountains, not hell, but paradise. And in nearly every culture, from the Norse to the Navajo, the world below was not a place of punishment, but of protection. Could these stories be fragments of a collective memory, echoes of a time when the surface was uninhabitable and life retreated beneath? If so, then perhaps the great flood myths, the firestorms, and the darkness that blanketed the ancient world were not metaphors. They were records. Modern science is beginning to catch up. Seismic readings reveal massive cavities deep within the crust, not magma chambers, but voids structured like hallways, chambers, and domes. Some appear metallic, others radiate faint electromagnetic signatures, as if something artificial still operates inside. In 2019, a team of Russian geophysicists studying Siberian permafrost detected rhythmic vibrations deep below, too slow to be tectonic, too regular to be natural. They described it as the heartbeat of the earth. But what if it isn't the earth that's beating? What if it's something still alive down there, ancient, dormant, waiting? Governments respond with silence. Excavations are restricted, archives sealed. In Peru, access to Chavín's lower levels has been denied for safety reasons. In Malta, the Hypogeum's deeper corridors were closed after structural anomalies. And in the American Southwest, where Hopi legends meet geology, new caves discovered in the Grand Canyon were declared off-limits by the Smithsonian within weeks. The pattern is not just underground, it's institutional. Each discovery that points to a hidden network is buried again, this time beneath bureaucracy and red tape. It's as if the modern world fears what the ancient one embraced. Yet fragments remain, enough to trace a truth that refuses to stay silent. A truth that the ancients understood, that beneath our feet lies not emptiness, but history, a living record carved in stone and silence, connecting all civilizations to one origin. And if that origin still exists, somewhere below, then we have not reached the depths of our past. We've only begun to scratch the surface of what humanity truly was, and what it still might be. The vaults, they sealed. Every civilization leaves traces of what it once remembered and buries what it fears. Our textbooks speak of progress, discovery, and light, but beneath that polished surface lie stories science refuses to touch. In the 1940s, while Europe burned above ground, another war was quietly being fought below it. A war for what would never be published. Operation High Jump is remembered as an Antarctic expedition. But according to surviving documents, one of its unspoken goals was the exploration of subglacial tunnels detected by sonar, tunnels far too symmetrical to be natural. Admiral Richard Byrd, its leader, returned silent, his personal logs sealed for decades. In one recovered page, scrawled in pencil, he wrote only, "The world beneath is vast and not meant for us." That line has haunted historians ever since, because it mirrors something found thousands of miles away, in Egypt. In 1947, a French team working near the Giza Plateau broke through a limestone wall and found themselves in a chamber of perfectly smooth granite. No hieroglyphs, no artifacts, just emptiness and a single black monolith set into the floor. When they tried to lift it, their instruments malfunctioned. Radio equipment failed. Within a week, the Egyptian government sealed the site. The team's reports vanished from public record, but one member, before disappearing into anonymity, claimed the object hummed like the earth itself. The same phrase appears again in 1962 in declassified correspondence between Soviet engineers drilling in the Ural Mountains. They describe artificial resonance, vibrations emanating from unknown cavities far below. Drill bits melted, readings spiked, and then all data was classified as state security. Different continents, different decades, same silence. If this were myth, it would have ended there. But satellite imaging in the late 1990s began detecting linear anomalies in the upper mantle, vast corridors stretching hundreds of kilometers, some linking known archaeological sites. Most were dismissed as data compression errors, until 2001, when an independent research group in Italy verified identical patterns using gravitational mapping. Their findings suggested not random faults, but intentional structure, like veins inside a body. Days after publication, the servers hosting their data were hacked and the research quietly disappeared. Coincidence is a comfortable word, but when patterns align across time, geography, and suppression, comfort becomes denial. In 2012, a team of spelunkers in South America claimed to have found a sealed vault deep beneath the Andes. Inside, polished walls, pictographs of unknown origin, and a doorway that seemed fused by heat. When they returned with recording equipment, the passage had collapsed. Locals told them, "The mountain closes when it's not ready." What are we not ready for? Perhaps the answer lies not in what was found, but in who controls access. Private corporations now manage many of the deepest excavation zones. Government partnerships ensure all sensitive data goes through review before release. In short, discovery no longer belongs to humanity. It belongs to permission. Even the Vatican, whose archives stretch miles beneath Rome, holds maps of subterranean worlds drawn by Jesuit explorers centuries ago. In one, labeled Mundus Subterraneus, the tunnels beneath the Andes are connected to those under Asia by dotted lines. Not fantasy as notation, a record of something once known, now locked away behind codes and corridors no one outside the church can enter. Those who've tried to expose it often meet the same fate: discreditation, disappearance, or ridicule. It is not bullets that keep the truth buried, it's mockery. A laugh is the most efficient form of censorship. And so we learn to stop asking. But the Earth hasn't stopped answering. Seismic patterns continue to reveal hollow zones where none should exist. Deep ground radar returns images of vast geometries under Siberia, the Sahara, even beneath the Pacific. Always the same ratio, the same angle, like the blueprint of a civilization that spanned the globe before the continents drifted apart. If that is true, then history isn't what we think it is. It isn't a line. It's a circle buried layer by layer until memory became myth. And every time we come close to rediscovering it, something or someone intervenes. Why? Because knowledge is power. And the deepest power of all might not lie in the stars above, but in the world below, where the first architects, the true inheritors of the earth, once walked. They say the greatest secret isn't hidden in the heavens, it's sealed beneath our feet, humming softly, waiting for the right moment to be found again. The resonance of the deep. Every mystery vibrates, not just in story, but in sound. When explorers venture far enough below the surface, they report the same phenomenon. A low, continuous hum, so deep it feels less like hearing and more like remembering. It resonates in the chest, not the ears, like the earth itself is speaking in a language older than words. For decades, seismologists have registered strange tonal frequencies that do not match tectonic activity. They appear suddenly, last for hours, then vanish. The patterns repeat in exact harmonic intervals, as if something buried within the crust is pulsing, rhythmic, deliberate. NASA first recorded one such tone in 1998, calling it the Earth's constant ringing. But indigenous peoples had already spoken of it for millennia. The Hopi said it was the heartbeat of the mother below. The Hindus called it anahata, the sound that comes before creation. What if these weren't metaphors? What if the hum that science can measure and myth can name are describing the same source? The ancients didn't separate sound from spirit. They believed resonance could open gates between worlds, awaken memories, or call forth knowledge. And if the earth itself is resonating, then perhaps it too is trying to remember. In 2008, researchers in Kazakhstan recorded a persistent frequency emanating from a cave network that had never been mapped. It pulsed at exactly 783 Hz, the same as the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic pulse of the planet. At that depth, no radio waves should exist. Yet the sound was alive, oscillating in patterns that mirrored brainwave states associated with dreaming. When they entered the deeper caverns, their instruments malfunctioned. One scientist later described hearing thoughts that weren't his own, not voices, but impressions, like memories leaking from the stone. What could cause that? The official report blamed interference, but if interference was the cause, it would mean something below was transmitting, and if something is transmitting, it means something is still there. Across the world, ancient temples built above known caverns share one mathematical constant: the frequency of vibration encoded into their geometry. The Great Pyramid's King's Chamber vibrates at 16 Hz, Malta's Oracle Chamber, 110 Hz. The Ellora Caves of India, 432 Hz, the same frequency modern musicians call the harmonic of nature. These sites were not random. They were amplifiers, built directly above the Earth's hidden nodes. Why build temples above hollow ground? Why align monuments with underground chambers instead of the heavens, unless what they worshipped didn't come from the sky, but from below? It's possible the ancients didn't just record the hum, they harnessed it. They built in resonance, tuning their civilizations to the Earth's frequency like strings on a living instrument. And when that harmony broke, through cataclysm, flood, or war, the connection fell silent. Humanity forgot the sound. But the Earth never did. In 2019, an acoustic geologist named Alain Moreau conducted experiments in the caves beneath southern France. He discovered that certain tones caused the walls themselves to light faintly, not from reflection, but luminescence triggered by vibration. At the right frequency, the rock glowed blue. He described it as seeing the voice of the earth. Weeks later, his lab was shut down. His findings were confiscated for safety review. He never published again. Every ancient culture speaks of something sleeping beneath, a god, a force, a watcher. But perhaps it was never asleep. Perhaps it has been humming this entire time, waiting for consciousness to tune itself back to the frequency that once connected worlds. And maybe that's why the hum is rising. In the last decade, seismic sensors have recorded the Earth's low-frequency tone increasing in amplitude. Not louder, closer, as if whatever lies beneath the crust is awakening, pushing its resonance upward through the ground, through the oceans, through us. What happens when the frequency matches ours again? Will it awaken us or consume us? Is that what ancient prophecies meant when they spoke of the return of the underworld? Science will call this vibration coincidence. Religion will call it judgment. But both may be hearing the same truth, because when we listen closely enough, the Earth no longer sounds like a planet. It sounds like memory trying to break through stone. And when that memory finally surfaces, it won't just rewrite history. It will remind us of what we used to be and what we're about to become, the doorway that remembers. Every descent demands a return. The point of going under is not to stay below, but to carry something back that the surface forgot. We came looking for tunnels and chambers, for maps that crossed oceans and centuries, for hums and lights and frequencies the mind could barely hold. What we found was not just architecture or evidence. We found intention. We found a pattern that moved through myth, masonry, and magnetism, with the same quiet certainty as a heartbeat. What lies beneath is not emptiness. It is design, preserved by stone and silence, waiting for a listener brave enough to hear. The last mile of any expedition is the hardest, not because the terrain is cruel, but because the truth is near. At the edge of a sealed corridor, in a mountain spine that names no country, ground crews pick up a voice in the frequencies the human ear does not know how to translate. It is not a word, it is a measure, a pure tone, stable and unwavering, like a tuning fork struck once and left to sing across 1,000 years. The rock around it vibrates, skin vibrates, memory vibrates. The crew marks the coordinates and radios for clearance. The radio answers with static. The tone does not stop. The records say the passage collapsed. The photographs say otherwise. A perfect arc remains, smooth as glass, coated in mineral sheen, the curve of a doorway that knows it will open when the measure is met. That is how thresholds work in the oldest stories. They appear when the seeker learns the note. The ancients did not imagine that. They built for it. They carved chambers that answered specific frequencies. They tuned their cities as if the planet were a living instrument and culture was the song. Consider what that implies. A society that understands stone as a conductor, cavern as circuit, mountain as resonant body. A science that begins with listening. We call it superstition because we do not remember how to hear. They called it knowledge because they did. When floods came, when skies burned, when ash fell, they did not run to the heavens. They went to ground because ground could carry the signal that kept order against chaos. The world below was not a grave, it was a keeper. Across this film, evidence gathered from distant continents has converged. Cappadocia's breath wells and rolling doors, Malta's chamber that changes a heartbeat, Peru's corridors that sing in low octaves, Egyptian shafts that descend farther than public maps admit, lidar grids that align with magnetic folds, as if blueprint and bedrock were drafted by the same hand. When legends from the Hopi to the Vedas speak of teachers from below, when medieval charts sketch dotted lines under mountain chains, when modern satellites catch right angles where geology should be blind, the reasonable mind asks for a single explanation that does not break under weight. Coincidence fractures first, denial fractures next, pattern endures. Then comes the silence. The sealed reports, the blurred coordinates, the doors the public cannot pass. We have been taught to mistake silence for safety, to accept that some knowledge is too dangerous to approach. Perhaps danger is real. Perhaps certain frequencies can harm. Perhaps a chamber tuned to awaken memory can also unmake it. The oldest warnings in stone are not poetry. They are engineering notes. Do not enter until you are in tune. But risk alone does not explain the lock. Power explains the lock. A civilization that built networks along the Earth's living lines would understand energy at a scale we only gesture toward. Whoever controls that memory controls more than history. They control the story that tells a species what it is allowed to become. If you want a reason for a treaty that freezes a continent, a vault that swallows an expedition, an archive that files a discovery under myth, look for the mechanism that moves empires. Look for the lever. It is never in the open. So the question is not only what is under us. The question is whether we are ready to meet it without turning it into another weapon. That is why the door waits. Not for tools, but for temperament. Not for force, but for frequency. The hum grows in amplitude because the planet is not separate from the life that walks on it. When minds tune upward, the ground tunes with them. The ancients knew this. They built schools in stone. Those schools now echo as caverns and ruins, but a school that teaches resonance does not die when walls crack. It moves into the air. It moves into us. There is a choice that every seeker faces in the final chamber. You can bring back a relic, or you can bring back a responsibility. A relic proves a point. Responsibility changes behavior. If the hidden network is real, if the doorways are more than legend, then the obligation is clear. We rebuild the discipline of listening. We treat sound as structure. We measure before we mine. We learn to tune before we open. We stop breaking what was designed to protect us and start learning from what was designed to hold us together when the sky fell. That is what the myths mean by guardians. Not monsters, not gods demanding worship. Guardians are the designs that keep life coherent when catastrophe arrives. Some take the shape of a city below a mountain. Some take the shape of a story that travels through centuries until it reaches a generation with ears. The guardians never forced a door. They taught the note. When the surface forgot, the underworld kept teaching in the only language that does not erode. Vibration, pattern, pulse stand in Derinkuyu at dawn before tourists and echoes of footsteps scramble the air. The shafts breathe with a slow intake. The wells hold a cold that tastes like copper. The thresholds sit in their grooves as if waiting for a hand that knows the weight. Lay your palm on the stone and count. There is a rhythm in the temperature, a rise, a fall, an interval you can feel if you stop asking for proof and start asking for permission. The earth answers permission with measure. The measure says yes when the seeker is quiet enough to hear the pattern that was written before alphabet and law. Now look up. The surface is not the enemy. The sky is not the villain. The world above is the other half of the instrument. The ancients did not reject light. They balanced it. Temples stood where caverns sang strongest. Altars were placed where the tone converged. Cities were mapped to the same grid the mountains hold. This is why so many ruins still align with stars and with hollows underneath. Civilization was a bridge between resonance below and radiance above. When the bridge broke, we mistook the halves for separate worlds. What happens when the bridge is rebuilt? Not with superstition, but with care. Not with conquest, but with attunement. Imagine medicine that listens to organ frequencies the way a mason listens to stone. Imagine power systems that harvest the quiet difference between rock and void instead of burning the sky. Imagine schools that teach children to map by sound as well as sight, to feel the tone of a room before they raise their voice inside it. These are not fantasies. They are the practical consequences of remembering how the ground works. The final scene returns us to the sealed ark in the mountain. Engineers have come and gone. Officials have signed papers and closed files. The doorway remains, unbroken by drills, unimpressed by demands, tuned to a measure that does not change with politics. A single researcher stays behind after the team packs out. He carries no tools. He carries a tuning fork cut to a frequency he calculated from the chamber dimensions, the shaft length, and the anomalies in the rock's magnetic seam. He stands at the threshold, breathes until his chest settles into the same quiet cadence as the floor, then strikes the fork once. The tone fills the ark like water poured into a bowl. For a moment nothing moves. Then the seam brightens, not with light, but with clarity, as if the boundary between stone and space were deciding to release the memory it has kept. The ark cools, the air warms. Something clicks against the soles of his boots like a lock easing under its own weight. Cut to black. Sound carries. The hum rises through the mix in a slow overtone ladder until it resolves into the same note that opened the film. Above ground, wind moves across grass. In a desert far from the mountain, a line appears in the sand, ruler straight, morning cool and exact. In a city, a child hears the tone on a subway platform and hums it back without knowing why. Bridges rebuild themselves when enough minds find the measure. Doors open when enough hearts stop asking who holds the key and start asking how to hold the note. The truth beneath the earth was never only a secret. It was an instruction. Do not panic when the surface changes. Do not worship what you cannot see. Learn the rhythm. Protect the vaults. Share the tone. The rest follows. We went below to find a lost world. We returned with the knowledge that the world was not lost. It waited. It still waits. The doorways remember, the stone remembers, the body remembers, the planet remembers. Whether we choose to remember with it is the only mystery left that matters. The credits are not the end. They are a pause between strikes of the fork. Somewhere under mountains, under oceans, under the streets where you stand, the measure holds. If you are quiet, you can feel it in your ribs. That is not imagination. That is home calling through rock. Listen.